month, some of you this past week, we read The Discovery of Witches. It's the first in the All Souls trilogy by Deborah Harkness. Pretty basically, there's a witch named Diana
Bishop.
Thank you.
Like Bridget Bishop.
Who has been suppressing her powers on purpose, like trying really hard not to be a witch, and she's a historian, and the book is about her meeting this vampire and a pretty much, I guess, a power play for this mysterious book. They fall in love, of course, and I guess that's pretty much as general as I can be without jumping into the specifics.
I was not expecting to like this book because it starts very, very dry, very, there's a lot of academic stuff that's thrown at you. I did like the characters, which for me is always the most important thing. I have to be invested in the characters, and I bought the love story, so I liked it.
Yeah, I agree. I think it started out pretty slow, but I liked it because I liked reading about history that I never knew about, and the connections between the historical facts and the scientific DNA genealogy was really nicely combined, I thought, without much need for leaps of faith, like huge leaps of faith. I thought it was a kind of a nice mishmash of True Blood, or the Sookie Stackhouse novels, of course, with Harry Potter and Twilight, and near the end, even Avatar: The Last Airbender. So I thought that was pretty cool.
I'm with Julie. I really liked the mixing of the history with what's going on now, and kind of, bringing you back to reading The Crucible when I was in school, and trying to remember all the names and why, her parents were so important, and why she would be so important. I was definitely in it, and I liked the way that they did the love story. It did remind me a little Twilight-y with him, like, in the very beginning, but I liked it a lot. I thought it was really good.
Okay, I did not know anything about this book before I started reading it. I loved reading about Oxford and the library because I love books. The science part of it, I was completely lost because I know nothing about science. I'm a complete English teacher. Like, I can barely, if you ask me the difference between biology and chemistry, I could only say people and chemicals. That's the difference. So mitochondrial DNA and all that stuff he was talking about, and evolution, I was like, oh my God, you're losing me. So there's a lot of elements that I liked about the book, but it was painful to get through. Painful. And I don't know why, because there's so many elements about it that I liked. Did anybody read about the author?
I did. She is, and it actually explained a lot to me about, why she wrote the book the way she did, because she's a complete academic. She's like a Fulbright scholar, and I'm like, okay, so, and this is actually that was one of my issues with the book, and I've seen it in other books. Nina, you and I read, like, Diana Gabaldon's Outlander.
Oh, okay.
And in that series she did really well, but like later books in this series, I think an author kind of has all this knowledge and they feel like they have to put all of it in the book, and that's not the best decision ever. And while I did love the history and stuff like that, but maybe a little bit less would have kept the pace going, and the fact that there was like no action for the first half of the book.
Nina, weren't you the one who said this chick goes to the library?
When I was reading it, I put up on Facebook, I was like, okay, so pretty basically this book is about every chapter starts with her waking up and going to the library. And there are creatures milling about, and then she talks to him for a little bit, and they flirt or they fight, and then she goes home. And the only difference would be some days they did yoga, some days they did. I was just like, oh my God, this book is so boring. I expected to like it, so I'm the exact opposite. Like, I went into it wanting to like it and just knowing a little bit of what it was about, thinking this is like what I like to read.
Right.
So I wanted to like it. I expected to like it. I didn't like it as much as I thought that I would. tweak, but I always find it interesting when you try to give them a new origin, like why these things exist. So I personally, I was invested. So I thought this is really interesting. But I took issue with how she revealed things to us. Like, I'm just going to pull up one note really quickly. But Peter Knox is a member of the congregation. And I was just, and this is the witch that was kind of threatening her and, you know, approaching her in the library. And I kind of felt like, what's the congregation? Like, I thought it was so late in the book for us to be discovering this important bit of information. You were giving me too much too fast, and it felt very convenient.
Yeah, I didn't
felt like she did that a lot.
She did, and I didn't have the same problem about, you know, up until the end, you're still learning new stuff. That I don't mind. But what I did mind is there was a lot of tell and not a lot of show with all the stuff. Like,
Amen.
A lot of it is just people remembering things, or, you know, she's just telling you stuff that happened, and it's not, you don't get to see it happening. You know, you just hear about, oh, and by the way, back in, you know, 1400, this happened. And here's a couple paragraphs. Like, it was as if you're reading a textbook or a historical account. So her background just makes a lot of sense to me. And the whole thing struck me as, and I did enjoy it, right? But it struck me as somebody who is an academic, who is an historian, but who loved Twilight.
I started highlighting things that reminded me of different books. So I had, like, underlining for Twilight, and, like, one shade was 50 Shades of Grey. And it was getting, like, I was underlining a whole lot of things. So I was like, oh, that's so Christian Grey. Oh, that's so Edward. Oh, yeah, Edward said that in Twilight about the smell, her smell, you know, the whole thing about her blood. And all.
What I thought was, like, the most underdeveloped thing in the book were the demons. Like, I had a hard time placing them because they came off as jokes more than anything to be feared, or, like, I felt like she just threw demons in because she wanted to have a third kind of species of.
Like, she wanted to be different than the other novels.
Right, so they weren't werewolves, they were demons.
Right.
You know what I did like, though, is that they broke down, at some point in the book, they did break down, like, genetically how everybody was made. And I liked that because when I think of the Damons, I always think of them like brilliant people. So, you know, which is what they kept saying. They're really smart. They're really artistic. Right. So I'm thinking people like, you know, Poe and Einstein. You guys are just a little off. Like, you don't stand out like maybe a vampire.
I didn't get that at all. Because I felt like up until the one character, I think that, listening to your explanation, is his best friend, who was just like, he was needed twice in that damn book. To let us know that he was falling in love with Diana, which we already knew.
Right.
And then again at the end, it was like, oh, how fucking convenient. He just showed up. I was like, really?
I liked it, though.
Demons reminded me of is in the Men in Black universe, the ones that you can tell are aliens.
Oh.
Like the guy at the pawn shop or something. Right. Exactly. That's brilliant. That's how it was for me anyway.
Like,
what do you guys think about the which to me is kind of new in terms of vampire lore, where you know, witches have covens, that makes sense, but this, they were like families, like mother, father, brothers, like, and it was more like a traditional family than I've seen in other kind of vampire tales.
And I also like that it wasn't where vampires immediately were sexually attracted to each other and would just fuck each other all the time. Or mother, son, like they do a lot in the Sookie Stackhouse world. There's a lot of this. But
and two, I think it made it more believable that they could potentially be around us. Like, there are these families living around us that aren't odd, that everybody's, you know, which I
That's what I thought, too. I thought that made it more believable that they could be, you know, family.
I have a quote from the book that I highlighted and wrote, this sums up the book. So can I read it to you? All right. Hamish was doing his best to be patient, but the exchange was rapidly becoming unendurable. Matthew was giving out information like a miser parting with pennies. That's how I felt about the whole damn book. Giving us
brain.
Oh wait, here's some more.
Yeah.
Sorry. I think I only started to kind of enjoy it a little more when I read about her and figured out she was a historian and that she had actually found a lost book in the Bodleian Library. Everything. So that was kind of fascinating to me. She actually had gone through this. I mean, obviously without magic, or maybe not. We're not sure.
What did you guys think of the writing itself? I underlined one just line that just kind of annoyed me. Matthew's nose flared delicately.
Oh, I remember that line vividly.
I have actually read that phrase before about people's noses flare or their nostrils flaring
Do
delicately.
we do that?
Yeah, I've read it with more than one author. I think it's. I think
No,
that.
I think she wanted to know, do people really do that, though?
Yeah, do we flare our nostrils?
I flare my nostrils like crazy when I talk, but it's not
really?
delicate, believe me.
I'm doing it right now. No, I don't.
It took me out for a second because then I had to picture it.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you're trying to, right? Like I sat there for like a little bit going, how did he
How does that happen?
Like it
Did you
just
try to
bothered
do
me
it?
because it was such a weird, I don't know. And I felt like she had a few of those, but that was like the main or the first one, so I had to underline that. And I was just curious if I was the only one.
I did notice a few references to various characters biting their lips, because I know that's a pet peeve of mine.
Yeah, I did too.
I'm like forever going to be conscious of that. If I catch myself doing it, I have to stop immediately.
No one put
Again, does anybody really do that? Like, do we really bite our lips?
You know what? We do, because I've caught myself doing it. I'm like, oh my god. Yeah.
Do you want to kill yourself afterwards? Do you want to just say, stop it, Bella?
I did notice that, and you know, when you talked about the sex, which you know, sex, because
It wasn't sex.
It was
It's
no
not.
sex.
you don't even get to third base till like 60%, right?
Right. It was just like heavy petting. There wasn't a lot of actual intercourse going on.
And I know she explains it at the end, right? Like, this is why he doesn't want to sleep with her, because they might create like a super baby and start a war or
Which
something.
that was just kind of book 3.
But I'm like, really? There's no like magical contraception?
The tea!
That's what the tea, yeah.
Yeah,
That's what the tea was for.
Yes.
That's the only thing keeping the supernatural world from the brink of war. Is
Okay, but
That tea.
that's the other thing. Okay, so the book starts out about they're vying for this book, right? And I was digging that. I was like, okay, this book, when she finally figures out how to recall it or whatever the hell, we're going to get some answers, and, you know, maybe not in this book because I knew it was the beginning of a trilogy, but I'm like, okay, this is what it's about. Then they fell in love, and then it became about, oh, no, you mustn't do that, and you guys have the congregation. Each species has 3 representatives. They make up the congregation. I was like, really? Okay, great. Okay, you threw that at me. And then it was, at the end, it was like all this, like the one with the pregnant one with her husband. They just show up out of nowhere. Like, while we're reading, there's this character we don't know about, has been, all this history has been having, and then they just show up, and she's just giving fucking answers.
Right. Like no development at all. You know who she reminded me of? Was an Alice. Like from Twilight, where she knew where she was supposed to be and when she was supposed to be there and why she was supposed to be there, and here I am, and here's all the information. There you go.
And just take my word for it. So
Right.
like, everything was so convenient. Like, oh, and then the house. That was the other thing.
I love the house.
Opens up panels in the wall and shit flies out and adds extra rooms. I was like, really?
Okay.
I loved it.
But I felt like there were just chunks of like information. And there were hints. What I thought was really great was like how witches can do these different things. So I was like, oh, this is great. Maybe not in this book. Maybe in the next book I'm going to see someone who can fly, and I'm going to see, you know. But she could just do, and then the time walking. That just came out of fucking nowhere.
Yeah.
Oh, your dad could time walk. Really? Nobody.
By the way.
Yeah.
and yeah, this used to happen when you were a baby. You disappeared and you went back and got a piece of
Oh,
birthday.
yeah, she did that all the time. Like, that would have been the first thing I would
Yeah,
introducing
yeah,
somebody
exactly.
To Diana,
Right.
I'm like, oh, by the way, when she was a baby, she would just disappear and go to like
Right.
the prehistoric
And we wouldn't freak out. Like, are you kidding me? If I can't find my toddler anywhere in the house, I'm freaking out. Another time, but you're cool with it?
Well,
Okay.
it looks like
Did
it's the
anybody
premise
else-
for the next book.